Hey Summoners, welcome to another episode of OP Pick or Ban. In this episode, we're covering all the picks that are going to dominate the Rift on 9.21. As always, we want to keep you guys informed so you know who you should be picking or banning to win more of your games. With more changes hitting the Rift, it's important that you guys stay up to date. Make sure to leave any feedback, comments, or suggestions down below. For our question of the day, which popular champion is the least fun to play against and why? For me, I hate playing against Kale because she always manages to scale up no matter what I do. But before we get started, make sure to go to ProGuides.com if you want to see huge improvements in your rank. We upload video guides similar to this one on our website every single day. As of now, we're currently uploading a Challenger gameplay analysis guide for every single champion, so make sure to click that link below. Also, we have an exclusive coaching feature called Play with a Pro, which provides instant, on-demand, 24/7 coaching from the best of the best. Trust me guys, you don't want to miss out on this, so sign up today. Alright, with all that being said, let's jump right into it. First up, let's talk about the top lane with Kled. We've mentioned him over and over ever since he got his buffs back in 9.14. Kled is one of the strongest champions currently, and also a great champion for solo queue in general. He's basically designed for the chaotic 1v9 oriented style of games that are bred in solo queue environments. Kled's entire kit revolves around taking out a single target, making him a hard solo lane carry. What Kled brings to the table is hard engage, an oppressive laning phase, and grievous wounds. There's a lot of healing in the game, so it's definitely not something you should take for granted. When picking Kled, you should expect to play aggressively, create your own leads in lane, and use those leads to create opportunities to engage with your ultimate. Whether you're leading the charge for a 5v5 team fight or running down a mispositioned opponent, you're able to heavily impact the tempo of games as Kled. I really like playing Kled because my opponent will often underestimate how much damage I can deal, especially when I have my W off cooldown. If you don't play him already, we highly suggest picking up Kled. He can flex in the mid lane and hasn't seen any nerfs in spite of his high win rates for the last several patches. Even if he does receive nerfs, he's still a great carry champion because of the reasons we mentioned, regardless of meta. Next, we have Garen. We featured him last episode, and he's even set for some nerfs this time around. In spite of this, we think that he'll still be a powerful force in the top lane. To summarize, Garen is really strong right now as a result of his E now proccing Conqueror. He deals insane damage once he reaches his targets, making him both a strong laner and team fighter. Aside from this, Garen is also quite tanky and is a menace, especially in lower elo. A lot of players who haven't developed their mechanics will struggle to keep Garen off of them and fall victim to the Beyblade himself. Pick him to dominate the lane phase and continue to snowball with those leads by carrying skirmishes or team fights in the mid game. To wrap up the top lane, we want to mention Kale again. Last patch, she held the second highest win rate in the top lane at a whopping 53%, with over 140,000 games played. That is insane. You'll want to pick her because she's safe, scales well, and can split push as well as team fight effectively. Her only weakness is an abusable early game, but you can mitigate this simply by playing passively until you're level 6. As opposed to before, Kale becomes self-sufficient much earlier on, so she's an overall very safe pick. We don't expect many of you guys to express interest in playing her when there are plenty of champions you can carry with, but do heavily suggest banning her. She's a huge nuisance to play against because you're always on a timer. It really sucks to be in a position where you have to do something because that's when you can start making mistakes, since the alternative option would be to do nothing and lose anyway. Make sure to take one last look as we show those top lane builds one more time. Alright, let's move on to the jungle next. We're bringing back a familiar face with Kha'Zix first. We know a lot of you guys hate playing versus him. He had a 16% ban rate last patch after all. It's definitely clear to us. Pretty much anyone who isn't playing him hates him. If he manages to make it past the ban phase, make sure to lock him in for some free LP. The combination of his burst damage, stealth, and neutral objective pressure makes Kha'Zix a top tier pick. While we might not see him very often in competitive play, he's a champion who destroys solo queue games because he can do the things that are most important, make picks and take objectives quickly. Especially when fed, Kha'Zix can instantly pop whichever opponent is unfortunate enough to find themselves on his radar. Once he evolves his Q, he's also able to quickly cut down neutral monsters, including Dragon, Rift Herald, and Baron. The short cooldown on his Q doesn't just limit his strength to these, as he is a formidable 1v1 duelist as well. Even in the early game, finding a Kha'Zix in a 1v1 situation is far from ideal because of his insane damage towards isolated targets. When playing in more difficult matchups, try to path so that you can avoid the enemy jungler early on. Kha'Zix outscales many of his opponents, especially when he can manage to get some items and put some more levels into his Q. Back-to-back appearances aren't uncommon in our series, and the most worthy case this episode is Shaco. The buffs he saw last patch have made him an insanely powerful jester, and it doesn't look like any changes are coming his way. Like we said last episode, make sure to ban him if you're auto-filled or if you're not jungling. He makes laning the least enjoyable stage of the game since you're always looking every direction, making sure there isn't a clown next to you. As a direct result of his boxes now hitting multiple targets, Shaco is able to clear the jungle more quickly and also able to skip Tiamat. This means he comes online faster and better than before. Shaco is one of the most terrifying champions in the game as he's always a huge threat to anyone on the enemy team, able to one-shot them from out of the blue. Here's a recap of our jungle builds. Let's move on to the mid lane next. Our first mid lane pick is Zed. Aside from being a stylish pick, he's also a good one. Zed is a very safe blind pick, dominates many lane matchups, is a strong roamer, and split pushes well. When playing Zed, you want to take advantage of how safely you can trade. With his W, he can look for trades from extended ranges, and use it a second time when he can confidently commit for a kill. One of the biggest strengths of Zed is his ability to easily proc Electrocute. Trades are both quick and effective as a result of this. As the game progresses, Zed can look to side lane or pick off enemies who are overextended while trying to. Although his win rate isn't extremely high, he does possess one of the highest ban rates in the game, hitting 36% last patch. What I find really strong about Zed is that every matchup is playable. At worst, it's a farm matchup where you spam Q, but at best, you can ult your opponent over and over again, pressuring solo kill after solo kill. Next up is yet again Fizz. We've featured him in several episodes, so we'll keep this one short. To reiterate, Fizz is safe, a strong laner, hard to gank, able to assassinate his foes, and stall for a lot of time. Against both AP and AD opponents, Fizz has ways of approaching pretty much any matchup. Later into the game, landing a shark is practically a death sentence, and there's no way you're gonna get out of that sticky situation. To wrap up the mid lane, we're throwing in Kha'Zix again. While many AD mid laners do well versus him, one of his strongest counters, Garen, is facing some nerfs this patch. Ideally, you would want to pick Kha'Zix versus a champion that deals magic damage. Nevertheless though, Kha'Zix is a strong pick because of his high damage output and mobility in the late game. Trying to gank a Kha'Zix after level 6 is one of the most difficult tasks to accomplish because of its range and low cooldown. Once he hits 16, it's pretty much game over for his opponents since he'll fully come online with his ability to constantly jump around. While Kha'Zix's wave clear is lacking early on in the game, he's still a strong laner against AP champions. He's able to proc a magic damage shield while simultaneously poking his opponents, meaning that his enemies won't be able to effectively trade back. If you like playing AP champions exclusively, you should definitely consider throwing your ban at Kha'Zix. On the flip side, it's in your best interest not to pick him blind so that you don't have to feed a Zed or Talon and give him a free lane. Our analysts believe that under the right circumstances, Kha'Zix is one of the hardest carry champions in the entire game. He deals so much damage and is so hard to avoid, meaning that he can pull several members into a side lane or hard carry teamfights by assassinating backline threats. One more time, here are those mid lane builds for you guys. Alright, let's move on to the bot lane now. Our bot lane picks are the exact same as last patch, with a new addition. First up is Caitlyn. Not only is she safe, but she's also oppressive. She's still running rampant in the bot lane as the second most popular marksman last patch. Caitlyn's long range and incredible sieging allow her to slowly choke out her opponents and close out games. It's perfectly reasonable to expect Caitlyn to take her opponent's turret in most of her games, as long as she plays the early game well. The games where she can't should be a result of a really bad matchup or because she's getting camped. Remember, she's not the easiest champion to master, but she's not too tough to pick up either. While not seen as a typical 1v9 solo carry champion, Caitlyn is one of the most self-sufficient champions in the game. She can peel for herself and also attack her opponents from a safe distance. Her trap setup also means that she can heavily influence the next objective her team wants to go for. Whether it's trapping the next turret she's pushing for, or creating a barrier between the enemy team and a neutral monster, Caitlyn makes it difficult for her opponents to contest objectives. I personally like playing Caitlyn because every game feels so methodical. Win lane, rotate, group for objectives, and take a slow win. Our second pick is Ashe. She held a 54% win rate last patch, and we think she is straight up broken. While not as safe as Caitlyn, she's still really safe. You don't have to be the best to be good at something. Although Ashe is a utility carry with the slow and stun she brings to the table, her damage output is still extremely high. Maybe a little too high, to be honest. We attribute her high win rate to relative strength as well as how impactful having CC is. Having CC is how you initiate fights, make picks, or even follow up on engages that might not be the most clean. Ashe brings a lot to the table as she's able to carry teamfights fights and also decide when they happen. With her high range, she's also able to win the majority of her lane matchups. Closest thing she had to a counter last patch was Yasuo, but even he still held a negative win rate against her. It's really hard to beat Ashe because not only does she deal a lot of damage, but she also sets up ganks very well. Anytime you trade with her, you have to be wary because there could be a jungler nearby looking to pick up some free kills. Finally, let's welcome our new pick this patch, Vayne. Back in patch 9.19, she received a buff to her ultimate, and as our analysts predicted, that was enough to push her over the edge. Since she's such a snowbally champion by nature, even the smallest damage buff can be enough to set up that one solo kill she needs to get the ball rolling. In the late game, extra damage never hurts as well, so she's seen improvements in her win rate across all elos. Although Vayne isn't very safe, she's an aggressive champion who can dominate games once she pulls ahead. She has a lot of mobility, self-peel, and extremely high damage, especially when she's chasing down her foes. Vayne excels because of her tumble, as well as her passive. In other words, as long as she's stronger than her opponent, she's free to chase him down and play extremely aggressively, especially versus divers and bruisers. Vayne is a great pick because of how slippery she is and her ability to kite them. Here's a recap of our bottom lane builds as we move on to the support role. Our support picks also see no changes since last patch. Kicking off support is one of our favorite picks, Swain. He's another returning member this episode, as nothing has really changed enough to shake up the hold he has in the meta right now. We'd like to mention again how powerful of a pick Swain is. He has a lot of kill pressure in lane, scales well, and transitions into a carry as the game progresses. Although he's often played as a support, Swain hits hard like a solo laner. He doesn't need too much gold in his pocket to start popping off, and picking him helps round out any damage issues your team might run into. A lot of players really underestimate how tanky and how much damage Swain deals. If you don't immediately kill him, he's gonna pop off and make you regret picking a fight with him. When picking Swain, look for any opportunities to make picks with your E, or follow up with a pull anytime your teammates lock down an enemy. He adds a lot to the team in terms of damage as well as utility, so he fits into almost any team composition as well. Once again, we have to mention Blitzcrank because he's one of the best support champions for hard carrying. Following the buff to his hook, his win rate has shot up and stayed there for the past couple patches. When playing him, it's all about understanding the best times to roam, taking advantage of lane priority, abusing your power advantages, and of course, landing your hook. It's one of the most powerful abilities in the game, so you definitely want to make sure you're spot on and landing a good amount of them if you want to pick up Blitzcrank. Of course, this also means he's a very worthy ban, especially if you prefer to play a squishier support or immobile marksman down bottom. Finally, here's a recap of our support builds. That concludes this episode of OP Pick or Ban. Thanks so much for watching. If you guys want more content to help you improve, check out ProGuides.com, where we've teamed up with pro players to create guides designed to take your game to the next level. Also, keep an eye out on our YouTube channel, where we're constantly updating it with new content just like this. Good luck out there in the Rift. We'll see y'all next time.